Hi, everybody. This is Patrick, your host of the Bark Knight podcast. And today I have Amber Toro on with me, and we'll be talking about her upcoming book release, Umbra, which is the first of a series. So, Amber, if you would like, I'll pass the ball over to you and you can introduce yourself.
Awesome. And thank you so much for having me. I am Amber Toro, and I am a data scientist. I am mom to two small kids. When I'm not writing or coding, I like to be out in the mountains on my bike or camping. And my debut novel is Umbra. It is an adult sci-fi coming out in April. And the blurb for that is, it is an intergalactic space opera with an enemies to lovers slow burn romance. It has fully sentient starships. It's told from 3 points of view. It has a militaristic society and a signal in the darkness that threatens to destroy humanity.
Awesome. So, what is it that made you decide you wanted to be an author?
So I've always wanted to write a book ever since I was a little kid. But life is busy and I didn't make it a priority until really recently. I haven't talked about it a ton. I'm talking about it more now with the Kickstarter out. But why now is 2 years ago, my dad passed away suddenly. And that got me thinking about what I would regret not having done. And writing this book was what I wanted to do. So I started working on Umbra, and almost 2 years later, it's about to go out.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear about your father. Did you and him have like a relationship related to reading or science fiction or writing or anything like that?
Star Wars. So we both love Star Wars. When they remastered them and put them out in the theater, he took me when I was a kid. He had a huge big screen TV that we would watch Star Wars on. Yeah. So we were big Star Wars fans.
That's awesome. You know, I had a similar thing with my father growing up, except for us it was Star Trek.
We like that one too.
I deviated as an adult, and I'm more into Star Wars now. My sister is more into Star Trek, but I've seen all the movies and I've seen a lot of the shows, so I appreciate that. But my dad writes too, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's pretty fun being able to sometimes he'll let me proofread things, and it's just cool to watch people go through the process of writing. I'm sure your husband or the other people around you see that, and are able to witness you going through the process. And me not being a writer, but being able to witness a few people. My brother-in-law writes as well. So being able to witness people go through the process is a really interesting experience.
The process is crazy. Definitely. I think when I started it, my husband was like, yeah, okay. And then like seeing all the work and time put into it, he's like, wow, this is a real thing. So, yeah.
So what is your process? Do you have certain habits that you have built into yourself? Do you have a routine? Like, what does that look like for you?
Sure. Yeah, I would say I'm a pretty habitual person, but on the writing side, it is a little bit more where I have the time. So sometimes it is in the morning, sometimes it's on lunch breaks, but a lot of times I like to write in the evening because I find it relaxing. So it's more kind of like the day's wrapped up, and that tends to be a good time if I'm drafting. Editing is kind of get it in wherever because there's so much to do. So it's more kind of just chip away at it.
That makes sense.
Um,
I think for me, I work in marketing. And so for me, a lot of times it's like small spurt things.
yeah.
I'll be putting together a blog that'll be, 4 paragraphs or something. And it's really just dedicating the time to doing it is kind of the hardest part, and eliminating distractions. I think distractions are probably my biggest enemy out there when I'm trying to be creative.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely about like put on the sound blocking headphones and like just take some time out so that you don't get distracted. I feel that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what are some pop culture influences for your series? Like, do you have certain things? Obviously, you just mentioned Star Wars, but are there any others that you're like, these are the things that you would compare it to or that influenced you?
Yeah. So some of the comp titles that I would say that maybe there's kind of elements or maybe there's influence, the Red Rising series, the Skyward series, Dune. And then there are, like you said, Star Wars. Some of my beta readers have said Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's just very sci-fi.
Yeah. Have you seen
Yeah.
Battlestar Galactica? Because I know I
Oh,
got a
yeah.
couple vibes from that from
That one
just
is
from your
mentioned as
Kickstarter.
well. Yeah. The Battlestar Galactica actually probably is one of the better comp titles for it.
Nice, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Looking at your Kickstarter page, I did also get sort of like Foundation trilogy vibes from it as well.
I am not familiar with that one.
So you should absolutely read it. It is Isaac Asimov. And I mean, he's one of the best science fiction writers out there. It is old, it is long. And so he wrote, like, they just did actually I believe it's Hulu. No, it's Apple TV. Apple just did a series on it. I have not watched that, but I've read the book. I read it a couple times when I was younger. It's very good. It is where the iRobot movie was pulled from.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is told over a generations and generations. That's why everybody was saying it would be very difficult to adapt, but also that's why so many influences come from it because it tells a story over like thousands of years. And
Oh,
there's
cool. Kind of like Children
small.
of Time.
I haven't read that one.
Mhm. That one also does that, which is interesting.
Yeah, so and that's one of the reasons why people said it was hard to adapt because like there's very small threads that go through the entire thing.
Yeah.
Mostly it's just like this is how society grows. But the reason there's so many influences that come from it is because there's stories in each one and they're all like, okay, this is what society was like at that time. And so one is like iRobot and others, they all have their own influences, but I highly recommend it.
That sounds awesome. I'll definitely check that one out.
Tell me about your plan for the series as a whole. So you're telling this as a trilogy.
Yes. Yeah, so the plan is as a trilogy. The original idea for the Sentient Stars Trilogy was based on concepts from my work around AI and thoughts around AI. There's this idea that what prevents something like Skynet or the Matrix could be having AIs as individuals. So the idea would be that most of them would be good, some might be bad, but because they are more powerful than we are, they'd be able to keep each other in check. So I wanted to think about that and take it a step further. What if these AIs wanted to experience life as their creators do? And so the idea behind the Sentient Stars trilogy was based on this idea that the AIs would bond with a human host and you'd have these fully sentient starships. And so that's kind of the base for the trilogy, the world that I created for it. And then there is a story arc that arcs over all three books. There's a lot of foreshadowing in book one, but there's still a lot of mystery. So I don't want to give away too much about where the trilogy is going to go. But book two is fully plotted out. It's 30% drafted. And then I'm not a plotter in general. So book three is more generally, I know what has to happen there, but it's not plotted yet.
Okay. Do you have a timeline for when you think that book two will come around?
So my goal is to get them out each year. So that, yeah, on the year mark is the goal.
That's great. That's really interesting. Your storyline that you're developing there around the AI that's coming into it. And did you say that you work with AI in your normal life?
Yeah, I'm a data scientist at a machine learning startup. So I actually built the core algorithms that our patent is pending on. So I do, yeah, I like the math. I like understanding how it works. Obviously, I don't work on general AI, but yeah, I like the topic a lot.
Yeah, it's a big topic right now. I mean, in marketing right now, it's everywhere. But it's really interesting to think about where we are as a society today, where it's becoming a topic like that, and where it could potentially go. Sort of, what do you think about that? Sort of like our current state of AI compared to like what you're writing about, which is like futuristic AI.
Yeah. Well, and I want to be super clear that that is the universe, and it's so it is soft sci-fi. Is in you don't have to understand the science. It's very character driven and it's a little plot driven as well. But I had to understand all the science to feel comfortable building the world. So I'd like to be clear about that because you can be sciencey and really enjoy it and know what I did behind it. But
Right.
also, most of my betas were fantasy readers and they loved it. So I just want to be clear about that so that I don't scare people away. Um, but yeah, that was something I wanted to explore. And so there is a scene in the book where it's also talking about culture. There's a lot of exploration around culture as well. And they talk about how every tribe has a different destruction myth. And several of those are incorporate AI and what AI's place in the destruction of Earth that was and how that, it's different across humanity because histories are subjective. So there is a piece that talks about that. And then, yeah, in this case, the AIs are fully sentient, so they're characters. But yeah, and then as far as the technology goes, a lot of the technology is bio cybernetic. So that was really fun. Looking at how we might incorporate biology with technology. So that's kind of the way I went with it.
And do you go? How deep do you go on all of these dive? How deep do you go on all of these topics within the book itself?
A lot of it, I think, is more just mentioned, but it's enough. So one of my beta readers is a biologist, and like in her comments, she'd be like, "This could totally be this algae," and like, so it's enough that if you're sciencey, like it'll get your wheels turning. Like you'll be interested,
Right.
but if you're not, like you're like, "Oh, that's cool." So
So I know sometimes people develop like what they call like the Bible for their universe, sort of on the side. Do you have something like that?
I have been working on putting together like a glossary where I'm like putting down all my terms, all of my history. So I'm working on that. I'm kind of, well, when I started it, I was a pantser. Now I'd say I'm a plantster where I do some of the plotting. But so yeah, a lot of the world was developed through just writing it. So I am putting that together though, because I want to keep it consistent through the series.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Tell me more about the idea behind there being different tribes within the universe.
Yeah. So there's 12 tribes that left Earth that was. I based those 12 tribes on current space budgets. And so then the idea was that we went through this period of the wandering of it's probably about 10,000 years from when we left Earth to when the story starts, where humans were nomads throughout the galaxy. And then that influences some of the culture, some of the way, the weaponry, the way that they fight, the current government system, where right now all the tribes are united under the United Tribal Axis. But because they have been fractured for thousands of years, loyalties are to the tribe first. So it kind of creates this tension, political tension.
So how vast is sort of the expansion of the universe at this point?
Yeah, so we are intergalactic at this point. There is a primary galaxy because of resources where a lot of humanity is. And then there is the idea of these wormhole rings that are placed on the edge of stars so that they can use that continuous energy to create stable wormholes to different galaxies.
That's great. I think the topic of using wormholes is something that creates a lot of really interesting topics that you can expand upon because you've got all different types of worlds there that you can
Yeah.
design just based off that idea alone.
Yeah. And then there's some research happening in book one. It's about quantum energy transfer and the idea of how we could possibly use that for wormholes without having to rely on the energy from stars. And that is a piece that will be woven into the rest of the series as well.
What sort of do you have you been taking time to sort of like flesh out different types of planets that you would like to include in there or anything like that?
A little bit. Book two has an ice planet. And it's funny because I didn't realize that that's probably like Hoth, right? But when I designed that planet, it was winter and I was running every day in the snow. And I was like, I want to throw my character in like a situation like this.
Right.
So yeah, so there is an ice planet in book 2. They don't spend a lot of time on planets in book 1, so there's not a ton of development there. They do go to a couple, and those ones are fleshed out a little bit, but there's definitely a lot more that could be done there.
I love the idea of using winter. I live in Rochester, New York, and like we literally like so today it's like in the 70s, but there was literally snow on the ground yesterday. So it can we're in that weird part of the year where it shifts from like winter to summer every other day until it finally
Yeah.
figures itself out.
Yeah, we have that in Utah too, but we're still very much in the cold part, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, I hope it passes soon.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to use Kickstarter for the funding for this?
So I was actually inspired by a Kickstarter that caught my eye, which was for Suspended in the Stars. It's a YA sci-fi, and that's how I found that author, and her book was great, and I love the way she ran her Kickstarter. And I was like, I want to try that for mine. So that's why I wanted to that's where I got the inspiration to give Kickstarter a try. And then when I learned more about it, it seems like a really great platform to just try and get your book out as an indie author. You get in front of a different audience. And then for my Kickstarter, we are doing special edition hardcovers, which is really fun because, I don't know, without something like that, it's hard to move into doing those. So
Yeah.
that's the other part of it too. Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing I noticed while I was looking at this. So I guess just taking a look at this Kickstarter page right now, for the first thing I notice is your artwork, which I will say I absolutely love. How did that come about? The decision of which style to use?
So I have to give all credit to my cover designer, David. He's amazing. I came across him because one of my friends had commissioned him to do her cover, and her cover was stunning. And I didn't know what I wanted. Like, I just wanted it to be good, to be honest. And so I filled out his questionnaire, and I was like, I really like the new artwork from Dune. Here's like some of the stuff of elements I kind of think might be there, but honestly, like, I'm not an artist. So I gave him this super random brief of what I wanted, and he came back with that. And I was like, yes, this is amazing. I don't know how you did that with what I gave you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it really is such a unique style, and I think it looks great on a book too because you've got like I think the style of like black with like gold or white on it is like a good baseline for it. It gives it like a
Classic.
yeah,
That's what I feel like it is.
Yeah, and I love the matte black on it too, and the Kickstarter platform is I think it really relies on that idea of tiers a lot of times. So being able to say like, okay, here's your ebook, here's your hardcover, and the hardcovers get better and better as you go down. I really like that about it.
Yeah, me too.
I see that you've got like a sprayed edges edition here. That looks pretty cool. What is that exactly?
Yeah, so both hardcovers will have sprayed edges, but that top tier, we're going to do a custom template. So they won't just be sprayed, but we're going to do the stenciled edges. And that one, again, that was inspired by that Kickstarter I saw. She did that same thing where she had these stenciled edges. And I was like, I could totally do that. So they're going to look really cool. Those ones will be stenciled. The other ones will just be one color.
What's interesting too about this is you talk about there being a different version for the chapter pages and bonus material within this. Yeah. So it's almost a whole. It really is a whole new version of this book. What can you tell me about that at this point?
Yeah, I wanted it to be really special because people are believing in the book before it's out, and I didn't want it to be like the mass market product. So the idea at the start of the chapters is that those will be black. They look really cool on the edges like that. And so they will look different than the rest. The bonus material right now is definitely going to include, there's 2 chapters that were essentially cut from the beginning of the book. And my subscribers, they got one of those chapters. And I've had several messages like, why are you cutting this? Because I loved it. And I'm cutting it not because it wasn't good, but because it doesn't tie into the rest of the story. It's essentially like a mini story on planet of the main character and how she meets Pal. We'll call him Pal for now because he doesn't have a name till like halfway through the book, which is this genetically engineered creature. And it was a cute story, but it didn't matter for the rest of the book. And it slowed down how quickly we got to the point at which all the point of views collide, which is where things get really interesting. So I'm going to clean that story up so that they come together because it was 2 chapters and put that in the back of the book. And depending on what happens with our stretch goals, I have had requests for alternate chapters from different point of views. So that could happen as well. I'm going to open it up to the backers to vote on what they want for those middle stretch goals. So that could happen also.
That's awesome. I really hope that you get there so we can see exactly what you have in mind.
Yeah, it will be fun.
So I have backed a number of Kickstarter campaigns at this point. Have you thought about different types of media that you might want to go into at some point other than books for these? If the success hits that point, I know I've seen a lot of things where, somebody might release a board game and a graphic novel to go with it, or the other way around, they might release a book. And then eventually it really catches on and they're like, oh, I have an idea for a board game for this, or for a graphic novel, or for a video game. I don't know, anything like that. Have you thought at all about like, hey, 10 years from now, if I've released all 3 of these and we've got the opportunity there, like, have you thought about that? And I don't want to overwhelm you with that, but have you?
No, definitely not. Now that you're like telling me, I'm like, oh, wow, that would be cool. But yeah, right now, definitely just getting the book out is a lot. So I think that's a cool idea. Probably would have to think about it once I get the series out because that's like where all my brain power is right now.
Right. And I know there's a lot of opportunities out there to partner with places and help build out some of that stuff. So hopefully you get to that point. So I wish you the best with that.
Yeah.
Have you thought about if you could cast a movie right now and your title characters, who would you cast as those title characters?
I do not have a cast. That I should open up to my social because I will say like I spend most of my time reading or writing or hanging out with my kids. And so if I watch a movie, it's probably a kid's movie, which those characters would not be appropriate for my book.
Right. You're like, so Mrs. Incredible. Like
I should put that on social. I do like seeing the fan cast. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. So on your website, you have 2 characters there, Skyla Karsten and Rohan Dar. Are they from this book?
They are. If you're on the Kickstarter page, I have the full cast there. That has those 2 and then the other 4.
So just basing this off of looks alone, the first vibe that I got was Vanessa Kirby for the main character, Skyla. I don't know if you know who she is.
Not off the top of my head.
She's really good. And, as I was thinking this through in my head, with not nearly as much information as your fans and your beta readers have to go off of, I was literally just going off looks. I was like, okay, Vanessa Kirby, because this looks action-based, and I know she's an actress who can do action. The other one was Dev Patel. So those were the 2 that I got.
I'm going to have to look them up. Probably when I see them, I'll be like, oh, I know who you're talking about.
So do you have any advice sort of for aspiring writers out there, as somebody who is going down this road yourself? If there's somebody out there that's considering it, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think I have 2 pieces of advice that I think are most important. The first is consistency. We really overestimate how much we can do in a small amount of time, and we underestimate how much we can do in a large amount of time. And so if you're trying to take on something huge, like writing a book, having just a little time each day, like even if it's 15 minutes where you work on it and it moves forward a little bit each day, you're going to get there. I think a lot of people make the mistake of waiting to feel inspired, but it's like you're going to feel inspired and know what happens next when you work on it each day. If you wait for that just to hit you, you might be waiting a really long time. And like, it's not set in stone. If you don't like what you wrote that day, it doesn't have to stay in the final draft. It's not a big deal, but you want that momentum and you want to keep moving forward. And then the other thing that I'd say, which this one surprised me, was how important it is to find your community. This is really hard, and nobody's doing this alone. I'm part of several writing groups, and especially on days when things are hard, when you're doubting yourself, it's really nice to know you're not alone because everybody goes through that. So don't do it alone. Tap into a group because it really does. It makes a difference.
That's really good advice. So, at this point then, if somebody would like to purchase your book or look into it further, how would they do that?
Yeah, right now the book is up on Kickstarter. It will be on Kickstarter through April 3rd. And that's why I recommend picking it up, because if you get a physical copy, you're also going to get the ebook, which is nice because you're getting both medias. If we hit our super stretch goal, all of the tiers will also get an audiobook, which would be awesome. And then, like we mentioned, those editions are going to have additional material, and you'll get whatever goodies we're getting along the way. So like character art print, bookmark, those types of things.
Awesome. And I can say for anybody listening to this that the Kickstarter page looks awesome. The book art looks awesome. The story sounds very, very action-packed and intriguing and twisting. So, yeah, please check that out. So, Amber, thank you so much for being on today. And I look forward to seeing more about this out there.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you.